I feel like you clearly take the act of making comics seriously, but you don't take comics too seriously.
I don't take myself seriously either. I,
Yeah.
I think that I think that's the thing. Well, you know what? I take yes, I do. I take comics as a business very seriously. But you're supposed to have fun with comics. Like
Yeah.
you're supposed to have. I mean, this is a dream job. You know, it's a pain in the ass, but it's still a dream job.
Welcome back to the Comics Cube, everyone. 1 year later, we are back with Jamal Igle. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. I didn't get to ask you this last time, but I gotta know what specific thing that is not Superman the movie inspired you to make comics?
Ooh, oh, that's a. You know what? Okay, so when I was in high school, because I went to the High School of Art and Design here in New York, freshman year of high school, my buddies tell me there's a Marvel tour. This is the tour of the Marvel offices when they were
Mhm.
at 387 Park Avenue. So we cut school. Well, we didn't cut school the entire day. We cut school towards the end of the day. We're freshmen, mind you, doing this, but we leave early and we go down to Marvel's offices and we go on the tour. And that was the first time when I realized, oh my God, this is a job. Like, this is a real job. Like, there are people in shirts and ties, and there are offices, and people actually work in comics, which I don't know why that didn't dawn on me. Oh, please, wrong light.
I can play that game
I,
too.
yeah, I know. That's no, because there's a closet light,
Oh,
and
okay.
it was on. I forgot to turn it off. But it's very weird because I've got like two light switches underneath my tiger mask flag over here that I picked up in
In-
Kyoto.
nice.
Yeah. So
Tiger Mask.
yes. So sticking with the wrestling thing, of course. So yeah, so that was like once I walked into Marvel's offices, it was just like, oh crap, this is like there's like an actual career here. Like, you know, I could make money. I don't know. For some reason, it didn't connect in my brain up until that point that people actually made money working in comics. Like, I don't know. I guess I assumed everybody drew comics for fun, like I did up until that point. But 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 that was sort of like that was the moment where it went just from being my obsession with comics as a reader and drawing and wanting to draw superheroes, and the switch went off in my brain that made me want to learn and study the business side of
Mm,
comics as well as the creative side. So that was the moment. So yeah.
it's interesting. How do you think your life would be different if you saw Star Wars before Superman 1978?
Oof. I don't know. I mean, I
Could you
don't
be a
know.
filmmaker right now?
Probably, probably, or an animator. I mean, I think I'd probably be. I think it would be more involved with the film side because because of my acting background as well. So I think that would have been where I probably would have leaned more anyway. I probably still would have ended up going to an art high school because the school that I went to also had a film track as well as like illustration and graphic design and photography. So I assumed that I would have been doing something creative. But I think I would probably lean more towards like the whole like embrace, because I like Star Wars and I like Star Trek and I like sci-fi, but I love superheroes. So I think that's sort of like the divide. Like, you know, for me, Star Wars isn't as much an obsession as it is with a lot of other creators that I know.
Mm-hmm.
Because I saw Superman first, and I
Yeah.
had that exposure to Superman before. It was kind of like the same thing on television. I watched The Adventures of Superman, you know, with my father when I was a kid, and then probably like 78, 77, 78. That's when like Buck Rogers and Battlestar Galactica first came on the air. So that was, you know, afterwards. That was
So with I say the same thing because I saw Superman as a kid, but I didn't see Star Wars until like I was a teenager, and I like to
right.
tell people like Superman is the better movie.
Well, that's the thing. Well, same thing. It's like I saw, here's where it gets really screwed up. I saw Empire first before I saw New Hope.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
saw Jedi first.
Well, Jedi, I didn't get to see Jedi for probably like 3 years until after it came out, because at the time the lines would wrap around the block, and my mother absolutely refused to stand
Oh,
in a block long line to see a movie
it's
at
crazy.
any point. I do have a very clear memory of always like when Jedi was in the theater and walking past the RKO Kenmore in my neighborhood, which was the local movie theater, with like the line completely going across Church Avenue, up Flatbush Avenue, or back around Woodruff and back down towards Church. Like it circumnavigated the block. That's
That's
how big
insane.
it was nuts. It was absolutely nuts. And it was like that for weeks.
And that's in New York.
That was in New York. Yeah.
That's in a big city
Yeah.
with other cinemas and theaters like
Yeah.
all around.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's
You know,
crazy.
that was the time. I don't even think I've really had an experience. I mean, I've waited online for movies before, like on long lines for movies before. Raiders. There was a really long line for Raiders.
Really?
Uh, I went to. I actually waited once for 6 hours for a Back to the Future marathon. When Back to the Future 3 came out, it was like the premiere of Back to the Future 3, but they played 1 and 2.
Nice.
So again, it was like after school, we got out of school early, we waited online for the show, and like just spent the entire day in the theater watching all 3 movies, and it was great. But I think that was probably like the last time I really had to wait on a super long line for a movie. And you know, times have changed, sex changed, you know, people, you know, can book their seats and buy tickets and everything. So
Speaking of that, I mean, you know,
yes.
times have changed for movies. It's easier to
Mm-hmm.
go watch a movie now and everything. Well, clearly not during now, but you know what
Right.
I mean. Um, Meanwhile, over in comics, you
Right.
still get people going like, oh, you know, back in the 90s, things sold in the millions. And that's kind of an unfair comparison, isn't it?
It's an unfair comparison, but it's also a false comparison, because you didn't have millions more readers, but you had millions more copies being sold, because you had companies like Lehman Brothers telling their people who wanted to invest that they should be treating comic books like common stock. So, you know, and I saw this up close because I used to work back in the 90s. I worked at Jim Hanley's Universe here in New York, and the Lehman Brothers offices near the World Trade Center were a couple of blocks over. And when stuff like The Death of Superman came out, again, block long lines all day of people buying comic books, and then you have these stockbrokers coming in and buying 200, 400 copies, thinking that they're going to flip them, coming back like 6 months later trying to sell us back, and we're just saying to them, we'll buy them pennies on the dollar. Is like, well, what are you talking about? This is, you know, the death of Superman with the poly bag and the black arm bag. It was like, yeah. And I would take them downstairs, because there's 2 floors. I would take them downstairs and I would show them the pile of unsold cases that we had, and so we have to sell all of those before we buy that from you. So if you want to, so I'll take them off of your hands. You can have $10.
Tell me what you think of what you, as a fan and as somebody who was working in a comic store, thought of the death of Superman, being a big Superman fan that you are.
I was well, okay. The fan in me was very, very angry, but the guy who had at that point worked at DC Comics, you know, had, you know, become, I would like to think, somewhat of a student of the industry at that point, understood that there was a good chance he was coming back a year later.
Yeah.
I was just so I was very curious to see what they were going to do and how they were going to do it, because it was a very weird time, because you had the death of Superman happening, then you had Nightfall happening at the same time,
and the Clone Saga, then
and the clones, like, yeah, you had all these like big stunts, and then Image was popping, and, you know, just it was, you know, but it was specifically about the death of Superman. Like, I loved the Triangle era of the Superman books. Like,
me too.
I love the interconnected nature. I loved, from a editorial standpoint alone, I mean, it was a Herculean task. It really was. And they managed to pull it off beautifully, absolutely beautifully. And even if you go back and you read the books now, like, they hold up. They really do. Like, they're beautiful. They're well written. Like, the whole structure of that entire storyline is just so well done from start to finish.
Did you, because like Roger Stern, Louise Simonson, Carl Kiesel, and Marv Wolfman, Jerry Ordway. I'm forgetting one person. Dan Jurgens. How can I forget?
Dan Jurgens. You had John Bogdanov. You had, oh my God,
Tom Grummett, Carrie Gamble,
Tom Grummett, Jackson Weiss. Just beautiful stuff. Just,
and it was like so well coordinated. And so you knew he was coming back, right?
Oh yeah, I knew he was coming back. I didn't know how they were going to do it, but I knew he was going to come back. Wasn't a huge fan of the mullet, but, you know, I lived with it.
Did you think one of the 4 was actually the real Superman?
For a while, I thought the Eradicator was. I thought
me too.
I think of the 4, I thought the Eradicator was actually, because they did the whole thing a couple of years before with, you know, when he came back and he was Kal-El of Krypton, and he had the red Kryptonian suit, and he was all like austere and emotionless. So I thought it was going to be like a natural extension of that.
You're the only other person I've ever heard say that, because I'm the only one I know in my circle who said that. Everybody else thought it was the Cyborg.
No. That was, you know what? The problem with the Cyborg, even in retrospect, of course, looking back on it, was there was too much of a tell. Like, they were really going out of their way to make you think he was actually Superman somehow.
Yeah.
And
but
like, he was just too earnest, you know.
Ernest looked too much like him.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
And then there was that one issue with you think it's the Eradicator, but it's actually Kal-El.
Right.
That I thought was like, He tricked me. They tricked me. But who among the four was your favorite?
Oh, it's tough. That's tough. I lean towards Steel personally. Like, I love Superboy, and I got it. I wanted to draw that comic so bad.
Superboy.
I wanted to draw Superboy so bad. Like, when the comic was up and running, I wanted to draw it so bad. I mean,
Why Superboy?
But I think especially at the time, like, it was in sort of like the wheelhouse of the other projects that I had been doing up until that point. Like, a lot of the books that I've been doing up until that point were like young heroes or teen heroes. Like, the few like fill-in issues that I gotten to do at various companies is like Kyle Rayner and then Paige from Cobalt or Static or stuff like that. So I felt like, of all of the characters, that was the one that I sort of gravitated towards the most visually, like wanting to draw it. But I felt like I really liked how they presented John Henry Irons and how they were building his character. I think they just did a really good job with that. So that's why I really liked his character as well.
Yeah. With Steel, I mean, how do you feel about this? Because, like, even back then, I thought it's really weird that that's the one character that all of the fans are saying can't possibly be Superman, but he's clearly the most noble out of all of them.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know, the only reason that they're saying he can't possibly be Superman,
Yeah. But I think there's a bigger piece to that as well. I think I don't always want to just ascribe it to racism, although more often than not, unfortunately, it is. But no, it's true.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think in general, like, genre fans, not just comic fans, genre fans hate change. They hate any change that if you any even minor change that you do to a character is usually met with hate and derision and tomatoes being thrown at you. So if they had gone through with that idea of John Henry Irons actually being like Clark Kent, Kal-El reincarnated in this body, there would have been torches and pitchforks. There would have been an army of angry fanboys towing their long box.
Oh no!
It's okay. Nothing broke. It's fine. Nothing broke.
Okay.
My wife gave me a piece of banana bread that my daughter made. So
that's cool. I thought it was interesting because, like, it's like they're willing to accept him being a killer,
right?
And you can see that with the Snyder movies and everything. They're willing to accept that change to his character,
right. But they don't see that as a change because a lot of times the complaint that I hear from casual Superman fans is that he's too good, he's too noble, he's too much of a goody two shoes, and they like the idea of somebody that powerful being an angry god. They get off on that idea, but they get it's the dividing line between that and then Batman or Wolverine or the Punisher. The idea that someone cannot be intrinsically good, or if they are intrinsically good, they're corny. And I bristle against that idea, but I also recognize that's where that whole killer Superman thing comes from, which is why we keep making killer versions of Superman, like Homelander or Supreme or the Utopian or
or Injustice Superman,
Justice Superman or Omni-Man, or there's all these like
or
these super.
DCEU Superman.
Yes, this is true. He's Superman, but he's a dick. He's Superman, but he's a mass murderer. He's Superman, but he doesn't pay his taxes. I mean,
Get another idea, guys.
it's hard. It's. But you also had that desire to want to play with that toy, and not everybody has the same vision of the character that you or I would have. My first visual, whenever I close my eyes and I think of Superman, it's not even Superman the movie, it's George Reeves. That's and then it goes from George Reeves in my head chronologically. It goes from George Reeves to Filmation to Superman the movie.
Oh yeah.
And then it branches from there.
There's no Fleischer in there anywhere?
I didn't see any of the Fleischer cartoons until I was probably like 15 or 16 years old.
Okay.
Because they weren't available. And they were, I think a friend of mine got them from a bootleg from a convention. So I hadn't really seen the Fleischer cartoons until that point. And I loved the Fleischer cartoons once I saw them, but it was also a very, good night, baby. It was also a very different vision of Superman. You're getting a full family experience here.
Meanwhile, my mom is right there, and I'm like, yeah. With all of that, you're seeing a change in the business. In 2018, you did this Twitter thread about sales figures. People, right. Companies are shifting, distributors. DC is with Lunar now, and Marvel signed with what's it? Simon and Spencer, is it?
No, we're Penguin Random House.
With Penguin Random House, right? Yes. And even you're now a Simon and Schuster talent. So, and of course, you're working with Scott Snyder on the Comixology line. You got Dudley Batson, and you got that Substack thing going on. DC just partnered with Webtoons. How do you see this going?
Well, I think that we've been putting off, especially the digital end. I think we've been putting off, at least here in the States, we've been really putting off the expansion of digital for a very long time, because there's been this complaint about the retail end, retailers, comic retailers specifically, being very threatened by the idea of anything taking sales away from them. But I think one of the things that the pandemic has proven is that sales didn't decrease as more people were doing digital comics. Sales actually increased. There's always going to be a driver for print, and the biggest market for print comics right now isn't even comic shops, it's bookstores, because bookstores are on the upswing as well. They're starting to create more bookstores as well. It's really funny, because I actually decided to take a look at some of the numbers for Webtoons, for Line Webtoons, from their parent company, Naver. And they were putting together their annual stock report, and I was reading their annual stock report. And in the US, digital comics only have a 9% penetration of all comics. It's 16% in Japan, and I think it's like 40% in Korea.
Oh yeah. Because Webtoons is based in Korea, right?
Well, Webtoons is based in Korea, but Korea is one of the few countries that apparently has like almost 100% mobile phone penetration as well. Like almost everybody has a smartphone in Korea. I don't think it's quite that. I know in the States it's I think the last numbers I looked at was like something like 75%. So it's high, but there's still certain areas it just doesn't have like the internet access or good internet access, and our internet here sucks. It's
And you're in New York.
horrible. I'm in New York, but you know, when you go to like when I've been in Paris, like not only is internet fast, it's cheap as hell. Like internet here is slow and expensive.
Here it's slow and sometimes non-existent.
Oh God. But that's the thing. I think I've always seen digital as being very much a part of the equation. I've always said that the digital will expand as the technology to look at digital, to read digital, to embrace digital gets less and less expensive for people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's happening slowly but surely. So you got two choices. You could either embrace it or you can run from it. I've decided to embrace it. You know, we're still going to have the print component. You know, Comixology is partnered with Dark Horse, so the books are going to come out in print in Dark Horse. You know, I think most of the stuff that I've done for the last 20 years is probably up on Comixology in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's there. It's, you know, you can't, like, you know, barring, you know, that mystery comet comes and hits the polar ice caps and, you know, drowns us all and knocks every satellite out of the air. You know, we're back to like sending smoke signals and, you know, sending messages by Pony Express. You know, we just have to embrace technology. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Fortunately, I don't think it's going to take a mystery comet to melt the polar ice caps.
Yeah, we're already there.
So speaking of, I feel like technology has empowered creators as well to, you know, one way is Kickstarter, or,
right.
Crowdsourced comics. I feel like it's a new golden age of self-publishing. But also another one is just sheer genre diversity. I go on Webtoons and like there's so much.
There's almost too much, actually.
I know. I don't know where to start.
It can be a little, unless somebody directly sends me to their Webtoon, like I don't even know where to start looking at that stuff. And they're not the only one. Like I would love to read more web comics, but it's just there's so much content out there. Like, you know, the really good one, like they do a decent job advertising the really good ones, but at the same time it's just sort of like, where's the diamond in the rough that nobody knows about, that's like buried way down in the algorithm? Like, you know, what can we do to like promote that stuff too?
What do you feel about these algorithms? Because I feel like the algorithm gives you more of the stuff that you've already kind of seen, right? And also like I feel like it promotes things that other people are already reading. So there's nothing really to bring that diamond in the rough out.
Yeah, I know but I mean, that's kind of the same with everything, unfortunately. I mean, you know, you go on YouTube and it's sort of the same thing where, you know, even if you look at one video for like 2 minutes, suddenly you're getting like, you know, the same or something in that genre. I ended up last week doing this kind of, not like a super deep dive, but sort of like this little minor dive on Paul Williams. Do you know who Paul Williams is?
I don't know who Paul Williams is.
Okay, so Paul Williams was you wouldn't know him. He was the voice of the Penguin in Batman the Animated Series.
Oh, okay. Now I know who Paul Williams is.
Yes, but Paul Williams is also one of the most prolific songwriters in American music. He wrote the music for the movie Bugsy Malone. He wrote was it the Kermit the Frog song? That's the
Rainbow Connection
song. Rainbow Connection. Yes, he
really?
He wrote Rainbow Connection. But he also wrote and co-starred in a movie called The Phantom of the Paradise,
Okay.
which was directed by Brian De Palma.
I love
And
it already.
Yes, and he wrote the entire soundtrack, and the plot of the movie is based on Faust,
Okay.
and it's sort of like Faust meets the Phantom of the Opera, where it's about this musician who gets horribly scarred after Paul Williams's character Snow steals his music. You know, he gets his head half crushed in a record press. You know, he gets framed and sent to prison, has his teeth pulled out, you know, can't speak. So it's bizarre, but the music is great. And it's very Rocky Horror. It came out a year before the Rocky Horror Picture Show, but it's very much in that sort of like that sort of genre, like that sort of style, like very kitschy 70s like rock opera,
just that zeitgeist.
Yes, exactly. It's just it's bizarre. It's a bizarre movie, and I ended up like watching pieces of it and just being like obsessed with like some of the songs. So now I go on YouTube and it's just recommending clips of Paul Williams. So,
I think that's what I miss about print, because you know, if you bought like a comics magazine back in the day, whether it was Wizard or the Comics Journal or something, you know, there'd be that main feature, and on the sidebar there'd be like, if you like that, you might like this one.
Right. But I mean, you still kind of get that as well with the algorithm, but it's, you know, they have to make their money somehow, and they make their money by advertising stuff to you. And you know, I don't always like, you know, seeing, you know, ads for Amok Time toys showing up when I'm checking my email, but you know, it's
The Wrong Earth, Night and Day, just
yes,
ended, and
ended, and I just got my copy of the trade paperback, which will be out next month.
That's awesome. The first trade paperback is really good production value.
Yeah, no, the second one, I mean, I said it on Twitter earlier. Look at this beautiful son of a bitch. It's so pretty. It is so pretty. No, they you know, I love working with Ahoy, and they do such a great job with just everything from top to bottom. Just the entire treatment, you know, for everything they do is just, it's amazing. It's amazing they've managed to be able to keep up the quality.
And everyone at Ahoy looks like they're having so much fun.
Oh yeah, it's, you know, I mean, it's, you know, the thing that makes it work, I think personally, is that because it's such a small focused line of books, they're able to give everything more attention. Instead, they're not out to take over the world. They're just trying to do stuff that they think is funny and fun.
Yeah, and as long as it doesn't lose money, right?
Yeah,
then it works.
Absolutely.
Now, The Wrong Earth, you tweeted on July 28th that it will always be a high watermark for you. You'll always be grateful to Tom Peyer, and for giving you the opportunity to play in the Ahoy sandbox.
Yeah,
that sounds like you're leaving the book.
I'm not leaving the book.
Okay.
But because of Dudley Datson, I have to step away for a while. So I am still going to be involved, and there's going to be one shots coming out next year that they're putting together now. And the last conversation I have was, yes, I'll be doing the covers for those. And then after I finish Dudley Datson, go back to The Wrong Earth. But yeah, but no, I'm not leaving. These are my boys. I'm not going away. You know, I had, you know, as a matter of fact, I talked to the guys from Ahoy earlier today and just reiterated to them that, you know, they will always be a priority for me.
How does it, like, how difficult or easy or whatever it is it to draw, you know, multiple versions of a character all interacting with each other and making sure the reader knows from far away exactly which one is which?
It's, I mean, costuming helps definitely, but when you have, like, there was the last two issues where Alpha, where Dragonflyman isn't wearing his cowl at all, and you just see Dragonfly's face with like his hood, but without the helmet, and making them look exactly the same way. And then you throw in Man Dragonfly as well.
Great name. I love
Yeah, but it's one of these things where there's a page in issue 5 where they're all on the same page
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, talking to having a conversation with each other, and I have to make them look exactly the same, or at least as close to the same as I possibly can visually, and still give them differences. I mean, one of the things that I wanted to do with all 3 characters especially is there's 3 stages of muscularity for them, where Dragonflyman is much more of the sort of like 50s 60s ideal, not cut and muscular, but
He's pudgy.
He's pudgy. Well, no, I wouldn't say pudgy so much. He's not ripped, but the way that the costume, because it's spandex, and the way that I try to draw it as spandex, or as you would really see spandex being, it doesn't have the same definition as Dragonfly, who's has it's more cut. It's a more cut look, slightly angular, a lot more cross hatching and rendering. But then Dragonflyman is massive in comparison. Like he's it's sort of like Adam West, Steve Reeves, and then Arnold Schwarzenegger. But all with the same face, the same height, same face, different, little differences, different haircuts, different expression, try to keep it's that idea of them being different and yet the same. It's a challenge. It really is. It's a weird balance. And then ultimately, I mean, with this second series as well, is there's so many characters that you got to keep track of. You got the 3 Dragonflies. You've got Lady Dragonflyman,
which is the best name ever. Like, I so love that you guys didn't just go with Dragonfly Girl. You actually went with Lady Dragonflyman.
We went with Lady Dragonflyman, and she in issue 5, she has this like one person personal helicopter.
Yeah.
That she has, and it's called the Damsel Flyer.
Yeah,
which is an actual type of dragonfly. It's called a damsel fly.
Really?
So yes, really. So we call it the Damsel Flyer.
I love that scene with her and the mayor and the bank president.
Oh yeah. Oh my god. Oh, that was so much fun. That was just like
It's like you're basically drawing Mr. Peanut and the Monopoly Man. And and they're trying really hard to not be sexist in their minds.
But at the same time, you're like, there, dear. Why don't you let the men folk take care of this?
They think they're being chivalrous, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But my favorite moment from that sequence is just I have her turning to the camera, and I have her like outside of frame, looking at the reader, just like, can you believe these assholes?
What a bunch of jerks. That's my second favorite moment in that sequence. My favorite moment is she's like, let's use the, what do you call it?
The every scope.
Yeah, let's use the every scope. And you're like, all right, oh no, we can't use the every scope because we can't spy on women. No. And then you unveil the every scope, and it's literally like 12 TVs.
if that was the thing, because when we were plotting it out, and I was like trying to figure out that sequence, because you have this, it's 12 TVs, and then you have this whole sequence with Stinger chasing a bad guy, like literally chasing like a guy in a striped shirt with like a bag of money.
Yeah.
And then he gets kidnapped and dragged through the mirror. And then that's playing through this double page spread. And I love doing stuff like that. I love drawing stuff like that. It's such a great exercise. It's like trying to figure out how to pace it, and make it work, and just
I feel like you clearly take the act of making comics seriously, but you don't take comics too seriously.
I don't take myself seriously either. I think that's the thing. Well, you know what? I take, yes, I do. I take comics as a business very seriously. But you're supposed to have fun with comics. Like, you're supposed to have, I mean, this is a dream job. It's a pain in the ass, but it's still a dream job. I was out at a dinner the other night, socially distanced, of course, very safe. But one of the people that we were with was saying how their business really suffered during the pandemic, because they work in manufacturing, and they have a showroom, and they couldn't bring anybody into the showroom, and they were still paying rent on the facility, and all their employees are working from home, so they don't need the office space. And I'm thinking, I've been working at home for like the last 20 years. Ain't no thing for me, life just kind of, the only thing that changed was, the family started being home most of the time too. So, but I've been, I know how blessed I am to be able to do the things that I've done, and to be able to make a living, drawing guys in spandex kicking the shit out of each other. I mean,
I'm going to cycle back to my question about how you make characters look distinct, because I interrupted you with Lady Dragonflyman.
Right. So like I was saying, now you have Stinger 2, Jordan. You've got Alpha Stinger. You've got Night Sting, his older counterpart.
With the hair.
Yes, with the hair. It's all about the hair with the Stingers. The same thing with Stinger 2. Like, you take the helmet off, and he's got like kind of like a flat top thing going. So it's all about the hair with these kids. But it is the challenge of being able to draw that many characters distinctly, to give them all their own look, so that they're instantly recognizable, that they're not like a cookie cutter, or they don't feel like they're coming off of a template. Because I think that it's very easy to fall into it's very easy to fall into that trap visually as an artist, especially if you not even if you don't care. I don't want to even make it that cynical, but if you're pressed for time, a lot of times there can be a real sameness to the looks of every character, just for the sake of speed and expediency. And I've never wanted to fall into that trap. And I think one of the people that I really feel like, outside of like the people that I'm influenced artistically, one of the people who really helped me sort of home in on that was Pete Tomasi, when he was my editor. And he was, even before he was editing me, I would show my work to him, and he would say, why don't you do this, this, and this with the faces, and try to make people look a little bit different. And those were one of the things that sort of that stuck. And then I ended up going back and being a big fan of guys like Steve Rudin, Dave Stevens, and Bolland, and Garcia Lopez, and George Perez. The more naturalistic styles, and looking at how they tackle distinct characters as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, nowadays it's like, there's so many guys who are so good. Oh my God, it's
You say
it's
the
keeping up
talent
with it.
levels only increased?
Oh, it increases all the time. Like they're just younger kids who come into the business who look like they've been drawing for like 10 years, drawing professionally for like 10 years.
And they know how to color, and they
Oh yeah. I'm amazed at the versatility and the adaptability that they show. And it spurs me actually to keep wanting to learn and keep wanting to get better.
the evolution has been kind of insane, because I remember as a kid, I started reading in like 86 or something.
Mhm.
And I know that I had an older brother who would tell me what realistic art or what was and whatnot. And it was kind of ingrained in my head that somebody like John Byrne or George Perez looked realistic.
Right.
And now, like in the context of today's art, like, no, they don't.
Well, but at the same time, I sort of feel like part of that evolution sort of happened as a happy accident, where the ante kept getting upped artistically, and then editors started to expect more and more tighter penciling, more realistic looking characters. You cannot discount the influence that Brian Hitch, for example,
Yeah.
had on everybody.
Just the costumes alone.
Yes, exactly. You can't, and I'll even say, you look at guys like Olivier Coipel or Pasquale Ferry, or even now, like there's this Jamal Campbell or Bruno Redondo or Perry. This is
Perry Perez.
Perry Perez, or the guy who's doing Planet-Sized X-Men with Jared. I won't.
Pepe Larraz. No.
Yes, Pepe. Yes, Pepe,
Yeah.
Pepe Larraz, or just there's too many good people. Bilquis Evely, like her work is absolutely beautiful. Marguerite Savage, like just it's too much. Like
There's so many of you.
There's I love it though. I absolutely love it. And but like it's not even just like the realistic styles. Like you look at guys like I started reading comics. You had guys like Rick Leonardi, you had Byrne, you had Bogdanov, but then you got like guys like Chris Schweitzer, who's doing this book. I love this book. It's called Six Sidekicks of Trigger Keaton.
Okay.
I'll
look it up.
It's a Skybound book, and basically the premise, it's Kyle Starks is writing it, and Chris Schweitzer is doing the artwork, and it's about these 6 former actors, like child actors, who were all sidekicks to this real sort of like Burt Reynolds, like Chuck Norris
Sold
ish actor who is just a royal dick to all of them. So they all like they're varying degrees of trauma from working with him, but he dies and they're trying to figure out who killed him. So
that's awesome.
So it's great. If you get a chance to read it, it's hysterical. It's well drawn. Like it's such an original premise. Like the whole thing is just really, really good. But again, it's like I love comics in general. Like,
Yeah.
as a genre, I love comics. I'm constantly on the look for new things and new things to enjoy. You know?
And what happens when you don't enjoy them, Jamal? Do you keep buying them and posting about them on Twitter?
No. Life's too short for that.
I agree.
I said the other day, look, there are thousands of titles coming out every single month from around the world. You have no excuse anymore to not find something that gives you joy. If it doesn't give you joy, put it down. Put it down. Let it go. It's okay.
Sometimes I go online and I see so many fans talking about all of the things that they hate about the comic book that they're reading. And I'm like, why are you reading it then?
Well, you know what it is? I used to think it was a sense of entitlement, but I don't think it really is so much about entitlement as much as it's about investment. There's a certain point where you feel an investment in a character because you have poured all of this love and energy, and in a lot of cases, money. Buying merch and buying toys and going to see the movies and buying copies of the book. So you feel like you're not a consumer, you're a stockholder. Which isn't the case, unfortunately. I have no more control over what anybody else does. I have no control over what DC does with this or Marvel does with their characters, unless I'm working on them. And even then, that goes through many rungs on the corporate ladder to make any changes at all. So and I know how hard it is as a creator to try to get anything going, to get storylines approved, to get changes to characters approved. It's super difficult. So when I see people complaining about stuff that they're not enjoying, even though they've collected every issue, they've been reading it for years and years and years, I just sort of feel like, okay, that's your right. You have your right to complain about it. That's fine. But a lot of times those complaints turn into harassment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it becomes unreasonable. You don't get to harass people. You can complain about it, but if you're going to complain about it and still buy it, then that kind of makes you the chump. Because that means that you have no control over yourself, or you have no discernment over what it is that you consume. I'm picky. I'm super picky. And if I'm going to spend time, and especially money, and more importantly, time, because my time is at a premium, because I got a family, I'm working,
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing with television shows or movies. Like I have to really, really want to see something in order to carve out that time to sit down and watch it or to sit down and read it. So I'm only going to spend my time and money on things that I enjoy. I don't have to complain about a book, because, especially with the nature of monthly comics, you wait long enough, creators going to leave.
Yeah. It's true.
That's just you just wait around until the next creative team comes. And if they don't do what you want them to do, wait till the next team comes after that. If it doesn't work, they'll get fired. If it does work, then find something else to read. There's plenty of analogs for your favorite characters running around somewhere on the planet.
Especially like people who are like, I always say this, like I see a lot of people. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, and I see a lot of people fighting about Spider-Man. Spider-Man Twitter is all about fighting each other, right?
I don't get that.
But
I honestly don't get that.
There's Tobey Maguire is the best Spider-Man, and the MCU Spider-Man sucks. And then there's the married Spider-Man should have never gotten married. Spider-Man should have stayed married. Blah 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 blah. And in my mind, I'm like, you know how easy it is to be a Spider-Man fan? Can you imagine if your favorite character was like Plastic Man?
This is not to laugh at any of the Plastic Man fans, because there are Plastic Man fans out there.
We sympathize.
Yes.
I wish there were more Plastic Man comics.
It's sort of like I keep an eye on Star Trek Twitter. Like that's my sort of like outside the box sort of like to see all of these guys fighting about like the original series versus Discovery, and every time you turn around, Alex Kurtzman's supposed to get fired, except they just gave him a 5-year contract. Like, and the same thing with Star Wars. I don't know how many times I've heard Kathleen Kennedy's on the outs with Disney and Lucasfilm, and Dave Filoni and John Favreau are taking over, except she's the one who hired them to do The Mandalorian. So,
oh man, people just make stuff up.
I know. There's an entire cottage industry for it.
You are working on something for National Public Radio. What
Yes,
can you tell me about that?
Okay, so I am working on a project. It's called Microface, and it is a comic book. And how I got involved with this is very interesting. Well, just to give you some background on it. So, the Planet Money podcast, which is apparently very, very notorious for getting involved with these projects, like buying an oil barrel, and making a vodka or t-shirts, or all these different money related projects, decided they were going to try and buy a character from Marvel's library. So they went to Marvel with the intent of buying something from their vast library. We're told no. So then they decided that they were going to go into the public domain and see what characters weren't already being used. And they found this character called Microface from the 1940s that I had never even heard of. And the whole concept behind Microface is he's a crime fighter, of course, who has a mask with a broadcast microphone built into it.
Oh, so that's why he's Microface.
Yes, that's why he's Microface. So he could project his voice, and it's basically like 40s Bluetooth, pretty much. And so they got a writer, Alex Segura is writing and sort of spearheading the whole project. Taylor Esposito is lettering it. They got a cover and they're basically decided to bring Microface into the 21st century by introducing the grandson of the original Microface, who happens to be a reporter for NPR.
I see it.
So they got Jerry Ordway to redesign the character, and he did a cover for it. And originally Peter Krause, who's also done work on The Raw Earth and Powers of Shazam and bunch, Irredeemable over at Boom Studios. Peter's awesome, but Peter was busy working on another project and couldn't commit to doing the series. So Alex emailed me, pitched me the project, and I was like, okay, I got some time. I can do Microface.
Very cool. What's it like working on a reboot of a 1940s character that is so obscure that neither of us has ever heard of him?
It's interesting because the script is really it's very, there's a lot of like Planet Money NPR sort of like insider stuff going. Like there's they talk about leveraged buyouts. Basically, this company is buying all these other companies, but I can't really spoil the whole story. But There's a villain in it called the Corporal Raider. So you can see where this is going. Where this is going. So yeah, no, it's fun. You know, it's fun. Part of the reason why I decided to do it was I've been wanting to learn how to draw comics in Clip Studio Paint. So I'm basically going to be doing the entire thing digitally.
Very cool.
Yeah, so it's it's one of those things, like, again, me embracing new technology. It's just one of those things where it's just sort of like, while it's not completely new, but it's new for me. It's just one of those things that because my normal work schedule is so busy, I never really had the opportunity or the right project to really just kind of dive into it full force. So that's what I'm doing.
And when would we expect that, and how would it be distributed?
It's actually available for pre-sale on NPR, on the NPR Planet Money website. So so they have it for pre-order now. So I guess it'll probably come out or sometime towards the end of the year, I think. I'm not exactly sure. I'm basically trying to get it done by like September at this point. So, but it's faster doing it digitally for me, because I don't have to, I'm working from my layouts, and it's essentially penciling and inking at the same time when you're doing it digitally.
Is it weird doing something that is explicitly to plug a company?
No, I've done it before.
Okay.
Well, I used to work in advertising, so
That's true. Which
I've done custom stuff before for people.
Speaking of which, we've talked a lot about comics as a business, and I feel like there was that news item a while back that said that Hollywood was only paying creators $5,000 for adaptations of their work, and I feel like, as much as it pissed a lot of the creators off, I feel like your response came from a completely business standpoint, where you were just like, well, let's work for hire. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Why do you think you have that kind of point of view, whereas the other artists, really do take it personally?
Well, I think a lot of it really does sort of come from, again, going back to my business background, having worked in advertising, having worked in marketing, having been, a marketing executive, I come from a perspective of having worked in corporate America, understanding, how these contracts are structured. And I sort of feel like, honestly, it's 2021. If you haven't been paying attention up until this point about how, how work for hire works, we've got, 85 years of guys getting screwed over for their creations. I mean, there's, you should understand, if you're getting into this business, you should understand the delineation between the two. Now, that doesn't mean that I think it's fair that, someone who creates a wholly new character for a major corporation doesn't get a revenue share of anything. I think it's really unfair. But when you're doing work for hire, especially for a company like Marvel or DC, you kind of have to go into it with the understanding that you're playing with their toys, ultimately. I mean, more often than not, the characters who get introduced are variations of existing characters. There's very rare, there's very few instances where a creator is given the freedom, to create a brand new character whole cloth. They seem to be doing it a little bit more now with like Batman books, with like the introduction of characters like Peacekeeper One and Miracle Molly and
Punchline.
Punchline. But I think that was something that that was kind of like a side benefit from the work that Tinian and Scott Snyder and the guys doing the Batman books, doing like the Court of Owls stuff, having something like Court of Owls really being braced outside of the comics themselves and becoming a much bigger part of overall Batman lore the way that it has, I think has kind of created more of that opportunity. But there really hasn't been that much of an embrace of recently created characters outside of Harley Quinn or Deadpool.
And they're flukes, right?
They are flukes, but I think what makes those characters work as opposed to a lot of other characters is the fact that they are sort of they are break the fourth wall kind of inside jokes for people that are attractive to people outside of the mainstream comic book reader. It's cool for us, geeks like us, to see new characters showing up on like the CW or in a movie or what have you. But those characters are definitely created with the idea that they will be exploited by their parent company, and unless you sign a creator revenue share agreement with said company or even know about it, you're lucky that they do send you that $5,000.
What do you think of the fact that Ed Brubaker doesn't get that much royalties for the Winter Soldier, but Marv Wolfman and George Perez do for Nightwing?
Which is weird. It is.
Isn't that the same logic?
Yeah, but Marv and George. Well, okay. Let's keep in mind that Marv and George, at the time that they were getting royalties for Nightwing, they were writing, drawing, and co-editing one of the biggest selling books at DC at the time. Mm-hmm. Titans was selling as well, or in some cases better than the X-Men at one point. Mm-hmm. So DC went out of their way to make them happy.
That makes sense.
In that case. There is nothing saying, that the Winter Soldier would have taken off. The concept of the Winter Soldier would have taken off the way that it did. But Marvel historically has also been much tighter when it comes to giving creators any kind of residual at all.
All right. Here's one of my last two questions. Okay. If you get asked to draw a comic starring a wrestler, any wrestler of your choosing, who would it be?
Ooh, easy. Finn Balor.
Really? The Demon?
The Demon. I have it. Years ago, I was just like, I could write a 6-issue Finn Balor Demon story and it would totally kick ass.
Would you set it in the wrestling ring at all, or just completely use the character of the Demon?
No, I would set it in the wrestling ring, but I would definitely lean in on the whole like Demon Balor transformation thing, where like the headdress of belts would be like, it'd be like Spawn almost. Like it would really lean more towards the supernatural way, like some of the 90s WWE comics were.
Like the Undertaker and Mankind comics from Chaos.
Yeah.
And my last question is, you've been signal boosting quite a bit here. So my last signal boost ask of you is, was that on your shirt?
Oh, this is Stephanie Phillips had these made, and it says, "I killed comics in cold blood." So yeah, so this is you can order it from, if you go on Stephanie's Twitter, Stephanie Phillips. I think it's at Stephanie Phillips, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember, but I follow her on Twitter because I think she's a great writer, and I love this shirt. I absolutely love this shirt. And as
And
soon as
has
I
been
saw it-
accused of killing comics in cold
yeah,
blood.
she has been accused of killing comics in cold blood. Comics.
Oh, guys, come on. Your insults don't even make sense. Anything else you want to plug, Jamal?
No, I think I'm good.
I hope we can do this again when we can talk about Dudley Datson.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's gonna be bonkers. It's gonna be absolutely bonkers.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamal.
No problem, man.